Before we dive into this twisted tale, make sure you hit that subscribe button, smash like, and drop a comment below, because the story you're about to hear is darker than most dare to imagine, and you won't want to miss a single detail. It was a cold Thanksgiving evening in Beach Park, Illinois, the kind where the wind whistles through the empty streets, carrying a foreboding chill. Most families were gathered around tables overflowing with food, laughter echoing in warm kitchens. But inside a quiet suburban home on Willow Lane, tension simmered like embers in a fireplace, unseen, unnoticed until it erupted into chaos. Erik Crump, a 21-year-old man with a history of volatility, had spent the day brooding. The dispute began over something trivial, a disagreement with his mother about a dog, quickly spiraling into a full-blown argument with his entire family. Words were exchanged, voices raised, doors slammed. A storm of anger and frustration that nobody could control. Lake County deputies were called around 7:30 p.m. for a verbal, non-violent domestic dispute. Erik agreed to isolate himself for the evening, but anyone who had seen his eyes that day knew it wasn't over. By 8:40 p.m., the tranquility of the suburban night shattered. Smoke curled from the garage window, tendrils of black twisting into the cold air, and the orange glow of fire licked the walls. Neighbors called 911 as flames devoured the house at an alarming speed. When firefighters arrived, they spotted a man, knife in hand, pacing nearby, and then he vanished, slipping into the shadows of the neighborhood. Panic set in. Was the fire accidental or was it deliberate? The answer would soon horrify everyone. Inside the home, the damage was extensive. Bedrooms were gutted, the kitchen scorched beyond recognition, and family photos charred into blackened silhouettes. But miraculously, all the family members had escaped. Their safe evacuation did nothing to calm the investigators who arrived at the scene. Forensics teams worked methodically, examining the angle of burn patterns, residues of accelerants, and the signs of forced entry, or the lack thereof. Everything pointed to one terrifying conclusion: this fire was no accident. Deputies pieced together witness statements. Neighbors described a young man fleeing the scene, his face etched with a mix of fear and resolve, vanishing into the night, carrying something in his hand. Canine units were deployed, tracing the scent to a nearby storage facility. By the time officers arrived, Erik was apprehended without further incident. Yet the questions lingered. Why would a young man set his own family's home ablaze? What was the motive behind such a drastic act on a holiday meant for gratitude and togetherness? As investigators sifted through the wreckage, they uncovered something unexpected: a journal hidden beneath the mattress in Erik's bedroom. Pages filled with anger, resentment, and cryptic notations suggested a plan far more premeditated than anyone imagined. Each entry hinted at a mind spiraling into obsession, the darkness festering until it erupted in fire and fear. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. Tucked in a corner of the basement, behind stacks of boxes, lay a partially burned envelope. The charred writing on it was barely legible, but one phrase stood out: "They will regret underestimating me." And just like that, the night of Thanksgiving, meant for family and warmth, had turned into a chilling prelude to something far more sinister. The morning after the fire, Beach Park looked calm, almost serene. Smoke still curled faintly from the blackened shell of the Crump family home, but the quiet streets hid a storm brewing just beneath the surface. Detectives from the Lake County Sheriff's Office arrived at the scene with one mission: to uncover the truth before it could slip away. And what they found would challenge everything they thought they knew about family, anger, and betrayal. Erik Crump sat in a cold interrogation room, his hands fidgeting nervously, eyes darting around as if calculating his every word. He claimed it had been a moment of anger, a stupid mistake, but his story didn't add up. Fire investigators had already confirmed the use of accelerants, the deliberate placement of fire in strategic locations, not the chaos of a spontaneous accident. Each new detail painted a picture of calculation, not impulsivity. Meanwhile, the investigators were sifting through the remains of the house, and they stumbled on something deeply unsettling. Beneath the collapsed ceiling of the garage, partially hidden under rubble, they found a small safe. It had been charred, the metal warped by heat, but it had survived. The safe contained stacks of bills, a few family keepsakes, and, most intriguingly, photographs of the family taken months before the fire. In every photo, Erik was staring directly into the camera, a cold, unsettling glare that no one had noticed at the time. Neighbors began coming forward with accounts of strange behavior in the weeks leading up to the fire. Erik had been acting increasingly isolated, disappearing for hours, sometimes days. He'd been seen in wooded areas near the neighborhood, carrying bags, speaking to strangers. One neighbor even mentioned hearing arguments late at night through thin walls, voices sharp with anger. Voices that weren't just disagreements, they were warnings.
But the most shocking revelation came from within the family. In conversations with detectives, Erik's older sister admitted something that no one had anticipated. She had recently confronted Erik about missing money, family heirlooms, and a series of threats he had made months prior. According to her, Erik had always been controlling, unpredictable, but she never imagined it would escalate to arson. The discovery of this hidden motive reframed the case entirely. This wasn't just an outburst of anger. It was a carefully orchestrated attack on his own family. As the investigation deepened, detectives uncovered digital breadcrumbs that made their hearts race. Security camera footage from nearby streets captured Erik leaving the house before the fire, carrying what appeared to be a backpack. The same backpack later found near the storage facility. Inside the backpack were additional traces of accelerant, a lighter, and a notebook filled with detailed observations about the family's routines. Whoever had written these notes had studied them obsessively, anticipating every move, calculating every escape route. And just when investigators thought they were piecing together the puzzle, they made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the case. Hidden in the basement, beneath the charred floorboards, was a letter addressed to no one but himself. In it, Erik wrote of feelings of betrayal, resentment, and revenge, but also something far darker. If they can't respect me, they don't deserve to survive. The tone was icy, premeditated, and terrifyingly rational. As the chapter closes, one question lingers in the minds of every officer, neighbor, and viewer alike. Could Erik's plan have been even more sinister than the investigators imagined? And if so, what had they yet to uncover in the ashes of that seemingly ordinary suburban home? The charred ruins of the Crump family home stood like a monument to chaos, a silent witness to a night that had begun as a simple Thanksgiving dispute and ended in a near tragedy. But detectives knew this fire had been more than destruction. It was a message, and now they were determined to uncover its meaning before anyone else got hurt. Erik's interrogation took a sinister turn. At first, he stuck to his story of anger and impulsivity, but when confronted with the journal, the photographs, and the letter discovered in the basement, a subtle change occurred. His eyes no longer darted nervously. Instead, they narrowed with calculation. He began to reveal fragments of his plan, admitting that the fire was intended to scare his family, to punish them for what he perceived as betrayals, but he denied wanting to truly harm them. Yet investigators weren't convinced. They began retracing Erik's steps before and after the fire. The security footage, combined with cell phone data, painted a disturbing picture. Erik had scouted the house for weeks, noting which doors were often unlocked, which windows provided easy access, and even the times his family members were most distracted. This wasn't impulsive. It was a cold, methodical blueprint for destruction. Then came the evidence that shook the community. Detectives discovered that Erik had made several attempts to tamper with fire alarms in the house, attempting to ensure that any emergency response would be delayed. He had even taken photographs of family members sleeping, creating a disturbing catalog of their routines. It was clear the arson was the culmination of weeks of obsessive planning. But the most haunting discovery wasn't in the house or the digital devices. It was in the storage facility where Erik had fled. Hidden inside a locker, police found items that didn't belong to him. Personal belongings of a family friend who had recently disappeared under mysterious circumstances. This revelation sent the investigation into a new direction. Was Erik involved in more than just setting a fire? Had his anger and obsession escalated beyond what anyone imagined? In the courtroom, Erik's demeanor shifted from defiance to something darker. The prosecution laid out a timeline of manipulation, obsession, and premeditation. Witnesses described his erratic behavior, his threats, his obsession with controlling his family. Each piece of evidence added weight to a narrative of danger that had lurked behind the walls of a seemingly normal suburban home. Then came the final twist. A forensic analyst revealed that the partially burned envelope found in the basement contained a second, hidden note, one that suggested Erik had considered leaving the neighborhood entirely, starting a new life, and potentially planning similar acts elsewhere. The implication was chilling. The fire had been a rehearsal, a test of control and fear. As the trial drew to a close, the jury faced the reality of what had been uncovered. Erik Crump was convicted of aggravated arson, residential arson, and a host of related crimes. But for the family and the community, the scars went far beyond legal punishment. The memory of that night, the fire, and the betrayal lingered like smoke, a reminder that darkness can often hide behind familiar faces. They thought the danger ended when Erik was behind bars, but 3 months later, detectives discovered yet another hidden notebook, with entries that suggested his obsession was far from over, a chilling confirmation that some fires never truly die.